housekeeping before we get into the details of the presentation with Avis. So today we're going to be focusing on addressing depression with adults and cultural considerations. And I am Megan Dotson. I'm the program manager for the National American Indian and Alaska Native MHTTC. So that's who this event is brought to you by, and we're featuring Avis Garcia. So this is just part of our network. We're part of a regional 10-region MHTTC network with a national coordinating office and a national Hispanic and Latino center. We are funded by SAMHSA, so the National American Indian and Alaska Native Mental Health Technology Transfer Center is supported by a grant from SAMHSA. And so the content of this event is the creation of the presenter, and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian and Alaska Native MHTTC. So following today's event, you will receive a follow-up email. Avis has kindly sent me some handouts also, so you'll get the presentation, links to the recording, and the handouts that she's provided. Also, our evaluation survey that we ask everyone to fill out will be included in that too. So don't worry if you've missed something here, it will be sent to you because you have registered for this event today. So we'd like to take the time to acknowledge the land. Although we're gathered here virtually today, we want to pay the land respect and recognize the indigenous nations whose homelands were forcibly taken and inhabited. So please take a moment to read this land acknowledgement, which was created by 3 members of our staff, Ella and Keely Driscoll and Sean Bear. Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to recognize our collaborating partner today, and I wanted to thank Mitch Russell for generating the SPIPA Total Wellness event for April and May for his organization. And he had come up with some suggestions for topics that were much in need to recognize. And so we've put this together with each other. If we could ask someone to mute, please. And he's the activity and events lead transportation person at South Puget Intertribal Planning Agency. So thank you for being here with us today if you're from his staff and joining us. And with that, I'm going to pull up Avis's slides and we will get started here. Okay. Always the share screen issue. 1 second. Okay, not see that yet. Share this. Okay, see if this works. Okay, Avis, can you see that?
Yes, I can.
I'm gonna ask whoever to mute, please. We're having a lot of feedback. Thank you. Okay, Avis, it's all yours, and please go ahead and introduce yourself while I get this on the correct slide layout.
Okay. My name is Avis Garcia, and I have been with the Addiction Technology Transfer Center for a couple of years now. I come from the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming. I am a member of the Northern Arapaho tribe, and I am also Eastern Shoshone on my father's side. I have been in the mental health and substance abuse field for 20 years now, a couple of decades, and I have earned my bachelor's, master's, and PhD all from the University of Wyoming. My PhD is in counseling and supervision. I am presently working as the clinical services director of the Crow Tribe's substance abuse treatment program that I'm rebranding, that we changed the name to Absolute Guy Healing. And I have been here about 10 months now. I'm really enjoying being here. I love working with the people here. I supervise about 8 staff right now. I have 1 clinical supervisor under me and 4 counselors under me. And here in Montana, their certification standards are a lot different from Wyoming's. And here in Montana, I have people working for me that come right out of the tribal college with their associate's degree. And they earn their certification as a counselor in training, and they can work up to like a master's level counseling in addictions. And I am the only one in my office who is dually licensed. So in Wyoming, I am licensed as a licensed addictions therapist and a licensed professional counselor. Here in Montana, I am a licensed addiction counselor and a licensed clinical professional counselor. So I'm dually licensed in Montana now too. And I often forget that my staff that are doing a lot of the groups themselves, lack some training in mental health issues. And so they oftentimes, I'm really glad that they come to me when they're, know that they have some limitations. And talking about depression, I want to say being in the substance abuse field, about, I'd say 90 to 95% of the people that come into treatment have dual diagnosis. So on top of their addiction problem, they have mental health problems. A lot of them have depression, anxiety, bipolar. I mean, they have various forms of depression. And one of the things that I work to teach my staff is to educate them, just like I'm going to teach you today, but to teach coping skills. I said, we just got to give these people some coping skills so that they learn how to get themselves through those moments where they're struggling a little bit. And depression has very many forms, and I believe we all go through some sort of depression at some point in our lifetimes, and being able to understand what it is and how to help also helps. So I'm going to go on ahead and get started. Today's presentation is on depression with a main emphasis of working with adults. I always do research on my presentations, and sadly, I spent some time online in the University of Iowa's library researching, and the closest I could come was 3 articles that did a little bit of research on Native Americans and depression. So there's not a lot of research out there. So I'm always saying we need more people to enter this field and do research. And this mental health in American Indians, it's wide open. If you're looking to go earn a PhD, this would be a great study for someone to study. Some of the statistics that I showed, and it's common with most social problems that we face, is American Indians have it at much higher rates than any other race in the country. So this Native population suffers at a 247% higher rate than the national average from depression alone. And that is a 427% higher than the national average. So compared to everybody across all races, it practically doubles there. So one of the articles I found is by Dr. Jacqueline Gray, and she did a study on assessment instruments. I always get asked if we have any instruments that could be used to assess people for specific disorders or problems. And so some of the instruments that are in this study were done through Indian Health Services. It's a great place to, have access to people to do research on Northern Plains Indians. So some of the instruments that were looked at in this one particular study was the Beck Depression Inventory 2, the Beck Hopelessness Scale. We're still having some background noise somewhere. If everybody would take a moment and check to see that you're muted. We have the CESD scale, the TEDS, the SCL90R. These all appear to be valid within the Northern Plains population. So the other ones besides the Beck Depression Inventory, the CESD is the Center for Epidemiologic Studies on Depression. Then the TEDS scale is the Tri-Ethnic Depression Scale, the Beck Hopelessness Scale, and the Beck Anxiety Inventory, and the Symptom Checklist 90 revised, the SCL90R. There is also a PHQ-9, and for those of you that go to Indian Health Services, you probably all get asked these questions. And when they do come across patients that they are concerned about, they, you know, especially for mental health, they'll make a referral to mental health. So that is just a common standard procedure at Indian Health Services that they do screen for that. We can go on to the next slide. So looking at the risk and protective factors, I found 3 articles. So this is the second one. This is by McKinley et al. This was done with 2 Southeastern tribes. They looked at resilience and protective factors, risk and protective factors. So what they looked at, the potential risk and protective factors on American Indian adults. So this was a 3-stage regression study to look at the factors related to depression and anxiety symptoms. So what they looked at to begin with was demographics, including income, looking at the ACEs, so that's the adult children, the adverse childhood experiences. I use that a lot in substance abuse too, and interpersonal violence, and then family resilience and community support. These results showed many elevated levels of clinically significant symptoms in depression and anxiety in these adults at 15 and 20% respectively. It also revealed that lower income is associated with higher depression and anxiety symptoms. I myself grew up in poverty, and I always tell people I didn't know I was in poverty. You know, my grandparents, well, my grandmother always provided a safe home, and we always had something to eat. You know, I didn't realize that was poverty to me. That was just normal life that everybody else was living on the reservation where I come from. They also showed that the interpersonal violence and ACE variables, so the higher scores on those, have a positive association with anxiety and depression. One of the things that I found very interesting was the strong support for the role of the family in protective and promotive factors that offset the symptoms of depression and anxiety. So having strong family support really showed that it can be a real protective factor against those. So if that helps anybody out there. Contrary to models of intervention that are more focused on individual psychotherapy, and natives don't go to therapy. We just don't, you know, we're starting to. When I very first started working in mental health, I was the secretary at behavioral health on my reservation at Indian Health Services. That's how I got interested in this work to begin with. There were very few that came in regularly, and then there were some that, you know, maybe they came in once. And it's the same here where I work. The Indian Health Services that I have here, I was wondering why the referrals we were making were being scheduled so far out. We might call and refer someone today, and their appointment's going to be 3 weeks from now. I get over there to meet their staff. I'm new here, so I'm getting to know this community, and discovered they only have 2 counselors there. And I thought that explains why my people are getting so far out. But crisis people, I take them in my office. My staff will come and knock on my door and, you know, let me know when somebody needs to talk. But even with me, they don't keep coming back on a regular basis. It's more like crisis intervention. And that's how it was back home where I'm from. I noticed I would get people in crisis, and once they got through the crisis, a lot of them don't come back regularly. We tend to rely on our family and our cultural ways. We have more trust in those ways, whatever tribe it is you come from and whatever way you practice. So um, the more Western models, I would say, are focused on individual therapy rather than promoting family resilience and family involvement. So it's really important from just this alone to be like, hey, we need to look at the family here and see how we can get them to support this person and be there for that person to help them with whatever it is that they're struggling with at that time. We can go to the next slide. And then there was one last study that I did look at. I just now see a typo, it should say AN. American Indians and Alaska Natives tend to be exposed to trauma and violence at higher rates. Psychological trauma increases the symptoms of depression and anxiety. There is a strong relationship, again, with interpersonal violence and childhood trauma that is related to depression and anxiety symptoms. American Indian women are much more likely than our males to be exposed to trauma. That includes interpersonal violence and child maltreatment. 46% of American Indian women and Alaska Native women report interpersonal violence victimization, highest of all races. And that's the same with children, have the highest rate of victimization. As the ACE increases, so does the likelihood of anxiety and depression, which is also an elevated risk for suicide and violence. And as I was doing this research using the specific wording, there was a lot of articles popping up on suicide, but today we're focusing on depression, which is a huge risk factor for suicide. So in kind of summarizing the 3 articles that I did find and read, I think I saw somebody wanted to see those articles. I haven't attached them, but I'll send those to Megan so she can send those out to you. What I saw was the higher the income, the lower the depression scores. Family resilience and social support are negatively associated with depression and anxiety. So the more tight-knit, close family you have that supports one another, they're more likely to have less depression and anxiety. And due to historical oppression, poverty may place greater daily stress on American Indians and Alaskan Natives with fewer financial resources to deal with the stress. And here where I work, sadly, we get people just to come to treatment is a big step for them. But when they actually come in and say they're hungry, that really makes it hard for me. So one of the things I've been doing is really finding ways to find funds so that we at least have snacks for when people come in, some coffee, some water, can we give them a granola bar, a sandwich, something, our people are struggling and they are hurting out there. So we need to find ways to help them. So a strong family environment may provide the social support and warmth that enables the risk for depression to be minimized. So no matter what your income situation is, if you can be close to each other, that's the best thing that can help your family. So we want to capitalize on family resilience and social support as promising ways to protect our people from psychological trauma and interpersonal violence and those ACE factors that can contribute to depression and anxiety. I also use the PHQ-9 in my program as part of the assessment process. It's just a real quick, easy screen, and we use a generalized anxiety disorder scale. So I try to catch those things up front. I also screen for suicide. CARF accreditation requires us to screen everyone for suicide. So we like to try to catch those issues on the front end and get help as soon as we can. We can go to the next slide. What this really points to all three of the articles in combination. Again, families are an important source of support and strength that are beneficial for our people. Practitioners can work to enhance family resilience as a sustainable source of strength. And, family therapy, there are not a lot of natives out there that practice family therapy, but there are some programs that are, that can help with that. Something popped up on your screen. We want to promote the protective factors that are in the family resilience inventory. I have included the family resilience inventory. I sent that to Megan last night, so you guys will get a copy of it. A lot of it is an article, kind of like a presentation, but at the very end is that family resilience inventory. So if you're very interested in that, you might want to take a look at that. And we need to respect and appreciate the American Indian collective resilience. So as we come together and help each other, we can protect our people. We can move on to the next slide. I kind of have this into two different sections. Not only am I going to tell you about depression, I'm also going to give you some tips that you can use that'll be helpful in helping people that you're working with. So this first part will be identifying the different types of depression, why a holistic approach is important, explore the effects of depression, and identify some strategies for helping people that are struggling with depression. Okay, I have this here because if you think about the flu, or even just the cold, and you think about all the symptoms that you get, the fever. Of course, a lot of people now, I think we were all thinking if we have COVID, and I had many moments like that. But most of us will probably want to go to the doctor, and are we going to wait until like something's really, really bad? No, most of us will go and get help, and some don't, but we will try to treat these symptoms on our own with over-the-counter medicines. And I just thought, if we all take care of our physical health like this, we're concerned about our physical health, and we'll go get help for this more than we will a mental health problem. I thought it would be really cool if we could get our people to start thinking, geez, I'm not feeling really good, and maybe I should go talk to somebody and see, if there's something they can do to help me to feel better. So like I said, this mental health part is new for our people. I also think education is still new for our people. We used to have we still have the lowest college graduation rates across the country, which was part of the motivation that pushed me to, go to a higher level. My goal has been to increase our graduation rate. So when we talk about family support, my own research showed that having family support helps you to be successful in college too. So that family support goes a long way in Indian country. Go to the next slide. Okay, as I said, there's different types of depression. And I learned this as I've been in this field as long as I have. There is the major depressive disorder, and sometimes that can include psychotic features. Sometimes that's triggered when people are using methamphetamine in high doses for long periods of time. There is a persistent depressive disorder, which is also known as a high functioning depression, also known as dysthymia. There's postpartum depression. After women have babies, their hormones get all jacked up and they can cause some depression symptoms. There's a premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and that was something I also learned about in my work, that women who have their menstrual cycle, sometimes this is often a regular part of that cycle for them. So being able to get help is important for them to manage those depressive symptoms during that time. There is also depression and early recovery from addiction. So sometimes I've heard it called PAWS syndrome, the post-acute withdrawal syndrome. But these are people that get sober and, they're like depressed of everything that's gone on around them and not knowing how to function because they were self-medicating so long with substances to avoid that depression or whatever it is they were struggling with. So that's when they, wake up to reality and try to, they have to learn that this is a normal part of recovery, that they may go through some depression in just trying to change their whole complete lifestyle, basically. There is the bipolar depression. The bipolar depression also comes in different levels, but for this presentation, I'm kind of going to generalize it, which is the depression that is also mixed with anxiety and mania. So they call it bipolar because it tends to cycle up and down. There is the seasonal affective disorder, also known as SAD. This is people that get depressed when the weather is bad. Like we're having snow here. We've got our second snow day here off from work. So we were just talking about, we didn't even have a very bad winter, and then all of a sudden we got lots and lots of snow. But some people really get affected by this, and so there is treatments for seasonal affective disorder. I've met people who actually just moved away from Wyoming because they needed to get somewhere where there was more sunlight for them all the time. Grief. Grief is a part of depression. People do present with depressive-like symptoms when they're going through grief, and grief doesn't necessarily have to be from death. It could be from losing your job, or maybe your house burned down, or your 20-year relationship ended. There's a lot of things that cause people to go through grief. The important point as practitioners is to be aware of when this gets to be a concern, of when it lasts too long, for several months, and the symptoms just seem really bad. So it's good to keep an eye on those, because over time, most people start to learn to function, like I call it a new normal. And there is situational depression. This doesn't include grief, something bad. This is why I said at some point in any of our lives, we all go through some sort of a depression. Certain things can, cause us to have some of those symptoms of not feeling so good. I see a lot of people that are in jail, and yeah, they're going to be depressed. They're in jail, and I try to make sure I'm checking that they're just depressed because the situation they're in. So when I write that up, I might write it as situational depression due to incarceration or separation from family or loss of freedom, but, it depends on the circumstances. And then there is also depression due to medical conditions, people with autoimmune issues, somebody who has a stroke. Of course, if you have heart disease, and then in the early stages of dementia, a lot of people, when they start to realize they're losing control of their mind, will go through depression. And lots of times that hits our older people. So, okay, thanks. We'll go to the next slide. Okay. Depression can, and then when I talk about the PACER effects, that's an acronym. So the first part is, for P is physical. Depression affects our physical health. One of the things depression does is it really affects our ability to sleep. So this is also known as the circadian rhythm. Our circadian rhythm is our schedule of how we live our life. Most of us, sleep at night, get up in the morning, get ready for work. Our body knows we're going somewhere. We get our work clothes on, we go to work. And then when we come home, a lot of us usually have some sort of routine before you go to bed, or, for those of you that have kids, maybe it's getting the kids ready to go to bed. So it's having a regular routine. So it's really good to take a good look at the sleep of the people that you think might be having some depression. Because what really happens is those neurotransmitters don't get to reset because the people that are struggling aren't getting enough sleep. So, you don't want them to dread going to bed, but we really want to shoot for getting at least 6 solid hours of sleep, preferably 8 if possible. Some people are really sensitive to caffeine. One of the things, I tell people, especially in treatment, is, staying away from alcohol. Alcohol and substance totally messes up your circadian rhythm. Not only do we have trouble sleeping, the appetite can be altered, and some people will have poor nutrition and depression, not eating very healthy. Doesn't mean you can't have cake, but just being mindful of trying to eat a much more healthy diet actually affects the way you feel. Some people increase the consumption to stimulants just to cope with fatigue. So I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I don't get enough sleep, and yes, I'm going to drink coffee throughout the day to get through my day. But I also get migraines, and one of the things I learned that triggers my migraines is my sleep. So working on sleep hygiene is really important. So when we have with fatigue, this increased consumption of stimulants can cause more fatigue. It'll interfere with our ability to work and just interfere with our activities of day-to-day life. So and we don't get enough sleep, we can't concentrate, and like I said, some of us self-medicate with caffeine, but there are some that caffeine just has minimal effect on them at all. I have to shut my caffeine off like 6 o'clock, no more caffeine, because then I'm probably not going to sleep. Go to the next slide. Okay, the next letter in the acronym is affect. Affect is how we feel. Our affect with depression can increase feelings of guilt and worthlessness, compounding the depression. So there's this overwhelming feeling of not feeling happy. So our environment can have an impact on how we feel. So there could be a lack of interest in things that you used to enjoy. So you want to pay attention when they, what things make you happy. They might say, oh, I used to do this. So that's another indicator there. It affects our ability to think, our cognition. So it makes concentration difficult. It can alter our self-esteem due to those internal and external criticisms. I always say, we're our own worst critics. Increase attention to negative stimuli and thoughts. So instead of thinking of good, positive things, their minds are kind of in the gutter. And you need to be mindful of self-harm and suicidal thoughts. Our environment, some people just stay inside and stay in the dark or stay in bed. Our environment does have an impact on how we feel. So, our desks, for example, at the office, I try to make it a habit of at the end of every day that everything goes in its place, and I put it in order, because I can't think if everything's just scattered all over. So, and then depression can cause a lot of disorganization in everything. So you need to be, not that we have to be perfect, but certain things in a certain place really helps us to feel better. Next is relationships. This can include attachment difficulties. CRAVES is an acronym that I have here, that the attachment difficulties, depression can affect our relationships. So the consistency, they may be going through withdrawal. So they're not consistent in how they relate with other people. Their responsiveness, they may not be emotionally available. So kids, if they have children, you need to be aware of, somebody else there to make sure the kids are okay. They may not be able to pay attention. They may not be able to provide validation, have any empathy. They may be irritable, and, they can't give people the support that they need. So they have a hard time paying attention. So it's hard for them to pay attention to the relationships. It's hard for them to, validate anybody's feelings. They can't give support for others. And, when they're being this way, nobody wants to support them either. So when people are overwhelmed, they go into protective mode. And that's just our brain trying to protect us, to help us survive. So we need to find out, what are you willing to do ask them, what are you willing to do to start feeling better? So getting them to start thinking of how they can change things for themselves. The next slide. Physically, you want to make sure that these people are hydrated, they're drinking water, they're getting a good healthy diet. People, just doing some breathing, just as simple as I've heard it called box breathing. And so that's where we breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4, and release it for 4. So some people, when you're oxygen deprived, your brain can't think. That's when we start to feel sleepy. We need to move. Moving helps you to breathe more and get your blood circulating more. It energizes your whole system. Walking around the house at a slow pace is helpful. Any movement is better than no movement. You can take the dog for a walk or just play with the dog, throwing a ball in the house. So, get them, try to get them to get on some type of a schedule during the day. Our cortisol levels peak first thing in the morning. So that's when you start to feel good first thing in the morning. I'm one of those morning people that I say my thinking's best, everything's great in the morning. It's kind of in the afternoon where I start to go down. So we need to rebalance those circadian rhythms, maintaining a schedule. Some people may need light therapy, and then looking at your sleep hygiene. Because I'm in the substance abuse field, we get people who don't have a schedule. They're probably sleeping all day and up all night. So it's helping them get that routine back into their life that they've been missing. You want to rule out or address thyroid or gonadal hormone imbalances, look at vitamin deficiencies, autoimmune or cardiovascular issues. So it's really good to have people get a physical. It's good for us to get a physical once a year. I use my birthday as time to go get a checkup and make sure everything's in good working order. And also pacing yourself. You don't want to go full steam on with all of these. With people that are, struggling with depression, they're kind of like in slow motion. So being able to have them, pace themselves, even if they spend 5 minutes a day doing some type of exercise and working up to 30 minutes or maybe 30 minutes, just starting out slow and not feeling like you have to go hardcore from the get-go, because some people will get really tired from overdoing it to begin with and then just not want to do it anymore. So it's good to pay attention to your physical parts of your life. Next slide. Affective. This is our emotions and how we feel. You want to add in happy for about 10 minutes, 2 times a day. You have them make lists for themselves. What kind of things do you do to make yourself feel good for at least 10 minutes a couple times a day? Some people, it's watching birds, watching comedy, having playlists, develop some distress tolerance skills. Again, another acronym here is CATS. So making comparisons of, what have they done before? Like what can they do now to make themselves feel better? Having some activities to do to distract themselves. Coloring books are good. Having some little crafts, looking at their thoughts, focusing on having more positive thoughts and sensations. So I like cats. I just like cats. I'm always watching funny cat videos. And, just doing these things for ourselves is a good way of doing self-care. I like to watch a lot of comedy shows. I've been, okay, we can have eating breakfast, getting ready for bed, figuring out ways to add in the happy, listening to favorite songs, making a list of your favorite songs. You can make playlists in your phones now. Sometimes, friends have playlists that they like to share. So just focusing more on the positive things. Cognitive, identifying and addressing core beliefs that are contributing to feeling hopeless. Encourage people to look at the facts of what the situation, what is the situation that's causing them to feel helpless and unsafe, and what is the probability that there's nothing you can do to get out of this feeling. Our mind wanders to things that stresses us out, so we need, which also contributes to feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. We need to focus on what is in our control and explore the reasons you're having a bad moment. So looking at those core beliefs, use reasoning that's focused on facts, focus on positive for 20 minutes a day, practice mindfulness to tame the monkey brain, identify what parts of the situation are within your control. And when I work with people, I have in parentheses there the egg diagram. So I just draw what looks like an egg. So in that egg, in the center of the egg, the yolk part is things we actually have control of. And then the white part of the egg, those are things that are just out of our control. There, there's things we just have no, we don't control the weather out there. So it's helping them to think of, there's some things that, we can't control. And when you're having a bad moment, part of the dialectical behavior therapy is just accepting it. There's always going to be things in our life that's going to cause us to have some stress and some anxiety, but what can you do to improve that next moment? Like some people might say, oh, I'm having a bad day. I'm like, don't let that bad moment ruin the rest of your day. Try to focus out of that. Go on to the next slide. Looking at the environment. We want to make it bright during the day, open the curtains, let the sun in. And at night, we want it to be dark so that we can get our brains ready for sleep. In the morning, you want to get dressed, get your work. For me, it's my work clothes. Get out of your bedroom, preferably get out of the house. Essential oils are something that's really popular that, I didn't think too much of, but as I got to being exposed to them more and looking at them, I've learned that there are some that really does trigger chemical changes in the brain that actually helps. Research has shown that it can actually make us feel better. And even, you don't have to, put them on, just smelling them will be beneficial. So there's a list here of the different types of essential oils. And bergamot is one that is pretty popular in helping people. We have sage and we have cedar and we have sweetgrass. Those smells make me feel good. Just the smell of them is just very calming and relaxing. And I tell people, you don't have to spend lots of money on essential oils. The dollar store actually has a lot of these that you can get that are, really inexpensive. Go to the next slide. Okay, relationally, you want to help loved ones understand what's going on and how they can help and encourage you. So if that patient is the one that's having depression, you'd like to help them find someone at their home or their friend or someone who could be, a supportive person to them. Don't assume you know how others are thinking or feeling about you. And I have that assume kind of bolded there a little bit, because when the word assumes is when you assume, you make out an ass out of you and me. So, don't assume that people know how you feel. Let them know how you're really feeling. Get support. Ask yourself what you would do for someone else who's having this problem. So if that person is depressed, you want, sometimes you got to do things for yourself too. And always thinking before you speak. Is what you're saying true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, or kind? So another acronym there, think. And contribute. What do you have to contribute to help that person? So it's building, again, that research says that relationship, that family support. So it's really good to let people know. Sometimes when I'm working with someone who's struggling, sometimes I see grandmas outside in the waiting room, or who brought you here today? How did you get here? Sometimes somebody brought them, and I'll ask them if we can bring that person in, and just letting them know. I had a young guy tell his grandma that, I'm just feeling really sad. And she's like, I didn't know that, so for him to actually tell her with someone sitting there, I think really helped them to look at some ways that grandma could be more supportive, but at least she knew something was wrong by bringing him in. We go to the next slide. Just to summarize up this first part, depression has many causes and consequences. It's necessary to address all the issues that could be contributing. Again, I like to start with the physical. Maybe there's something physically going on that we need to look at pain management, looking at their nutrition, like I said, helping them get those circadian rhythms rebalanced, and looking at their cognitive issues. Sometimes it's just their thinking errors, and pointing out those thinking errors. And working in the addiction field, we actually, I think, have a session or two that covers thinking errors, to let them look between the lines there, looking at what issues in their environment could be contributing to stress. Are, a lack of safety in their relationships? Are they in situations that are toxic or unstable? So it's important to figure out what is contributing to those problems. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get my. Okay, this next section, we are going to define depression symptoms, explore more biopsychosocial impact, learn how to ask strength-based questions, identify a range of causes, and explore some more activities and interventions that might be helpful to address the underlying causes of depression. Depression represents a cluster of symptoms. The diagnosis with depression requires people to have just a few of the symptoms. A variety of different things can cause or be caused by. So again, we talked about how our feelings, emotions, anger, anxiety, grief, guilt, shame, our thoughts, our relationships, our physical issues, and the environment. So that's what we mean by biopsychosocial, is we look at everything. Go to the next slide. Strength-based assessment. So what we would want to do is asking the patient themselves, what does this mean to you? What does, apathy mean? What is sadness? What is mood swings? What symptoms are most bothersome for you? What are you struggling with the most? And why do you think that's so? For each symptom that they're sharing with you, ask them what makes it worse. What about what makes it better? And how was life more pleasurable before getting depressed? What was going on that you noticed this dramatic change? What is different during times when you're not depressed? Because most likely, hopefully, they're not depressed all the time. So when we're looking at solution focused, we're looking for those moments when those uncomfortable things are not happening or going on. And how do you expect life to be different when your depression is gone? Kind of solution focused too. What is that going to look like? Who will know? Okay. Neurotransmitter imbalances. That's a lot of what this depression is. We have all of these neurotransmitters in our brain that contributes to those feelings. So this is the ability to feel pleasure, apathy, emotional flatness. These imbalances cause memory problems. We have trouble concentrating, can't sleep, have no motivation. They're just tired, irritable, and agitated. And, of course, our bodies go into fight or flight stress symptoms. So that's just your brain trying to protect itself again. I just seen somebody ask for a copy of this. I believe you do all get sent these when this is over. Am I right, Megan?
Yep, everyone will get it in an email.
Okay. We want to look at those neurotransmitters. We got dopamine and serotonin, and the endorphins are the ones we get from exercise. So we want to make sure, again, quality sleep, creating a good routine, addressing pain and sleep apnea. Some people need to go to the doctor and get some help with that. But there are other ways to manage pain as well. But I know sleep apnea does require some medical intervention, and some people actually need to be on oxygen when they go to sleep at night. Improving your sleep environment. Maybe you need those essential oils, or you need to fix your room so that it's nice and comfortable, where you feel comfortable enough to sleep. Some other things that can affect that could be shift work. My son works at nights here, so our schedules are kind of off. Looking at time zones, the daylight saving time. We want to also look at relaxation, biofeedback, learning some progressive muscular relaxation, and address medication side effects. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of medication you take, everything has side effects to it. So it's being aware of those. Like, opioids could be given for pain. And I know now the doctors are doing it less and less, and focusing more on alternative methods of managing pain, such as, having physical therapy and other types of ways you can deal with pain. I actually have another presentation that does talk about dealing with pain. We can go to the next slide. Our neurotransmitters, again, we want to look at our nutrition. I don't know if you've ever seen some of those, sometimes they're on Facebook, Pinterest has them about, if you eat crap, you're going to feel like crap. And that research really shows that that's really true. If you want to feel better, you need to eat better. We need to address addictive behaviors. Like I said, a lot of the people that I see that are struggling are the ones that have been self-medicating for a long time. They'd been prescribed some kind of medication at some point in their life, and they're like, oh, they'll tell you everything that was wrong with it. But then realizing, you're still not making things better. It might seem like it at the time by self-medicating. We need to address chronic or extreme stress. We need to teach people coping skills again. How do you manage those stressful times in our life? Because they're always going to be there. So as a refresher, we need to increase the amount of neurotransmitters flooding the synapses, protect the body from overload. The brain will shut down some of its receptors so the body does not overload. It eventually reaches a tolerance and a desensitization level. So when neurotransmitters return to normal level, the receptors are still shut down. So not enough neurotransmitter gets sent out. So things that normally cause the reaction are no longer strong enough to cause a reaction. So it's important that you take care of all of that to get rebalanced. Next one is hormones. Looking at the thyroid, there could be an altered response to stress. The thyroid impacts our mood, libido, and energy levels. Estrogen boosts neurotransmitters that affect your sleep, your mood, your memory, and libido. Affects your pain perception, learning, and attention span. Increased estrogen may increase the availability of serotonin. So getting the estrogen back in can also help the serotonin levels to increase to help you to feel better. And then the testosterone, low testosterone can be implicated in reducing the availability of serotonin. Testosterone is manufactured by the adrenal glands. This enhances libido, stamina, your sleep, your brain functioning is associated with assertive behavior and a sense of well-being. And I can speak to this, actually. I've gone through menopause, and I thought I was one of the lucky ones that I thought I didn't have any complications from it, because I'd hear from other people that had gone through it, like all these horrible symptoms that they were going through, only to realize that I wasn't feeling so good myself. And when I started to feel this is right when the COVID hit. And so I thought, well, maybe this COVID's doing something weird to me. And having had myself checked out, I needed to be put on hormone replacement therapy. And it really helped a lot. I didn't realize how much, I was, no wonder I was feeling crappy. You need, though, your body needs that, your brain needs that just to feel good. So That's why I say I can speak to that from personal experience. So sometimes we need to go get those checked. More on the hormones, we have cortisol, also made by the adrenal glands. This helps our body adapt to stress by increasing our heart rate. It maintains our respiration and our blood pressure. Cortisol levels increase early in the morning to prepare for the demands of the day, gradually decreases throughout the day. Also, this is our circadian rhythm. Insufficient cortisol can lead to HR and blood pressure, heart rate and blood pressure reductions, as well as reductions in energy and motivation. So if you're not getting enough cortisol, that can affect you that way. There was one more before you switch that. The DHEA is, they decrease as we age. So this also improves our motivation and sense of well-being. It decreases pain, helps with REM sleep, enhances our memory, and enhances our autoimmune system functioning. You can go on to the next slide. Hormones, again, get a physical to address what might be causing any imbalances. Eat a low glycemic diet. The less sleep you get, the higher your cortisol will be. The more sleep you get, the lower your cortisol will be. John, this is a guy from who wrote a book, co-authored it, Man 2.0 Engineering the Alpha, the Real World Guide to an Unreal Life. Interesting book. We go to the next slide. Final thought on these hormonal imbalances, that they affect millions of people. And I actually discovered this in a gym. There was a sign there that said, do you feel this and this? And I was like, I could just check all of these. I have all of these. That's when I discovered that I needed to be on some hormone replacement myself. So feeling anxious, irritable, gaining and losing weight, not sleeping, can't focus, and the appetite isn't the best. So those hormone imbalances leads to poor gut health, inflammation, increases stress and depression. And so we need to be eating an anti-inflammatory diet, which is eating a healthy diet, getting your omega-3s, getting your sleep, getting some exercise, and learning to control your stress. Pain, low serotonin is associated with increased pain perception. So people that may be struggling with depression will be more likely to go see the doctor for pain. Depression contributes to muscle tension as well, stiffness and achiness. So like I said, more people are willing to go talk about, what's ailing them versus are they feeling any depression. So some interventions for pain are exercise, guided imagery, muscle relaxation, alternate focus, being able to distract yourself. The TENS therapy, these are little electronic devices that you can use. You can buy them from Amazon now, and these sends electrical stimulation to your brain that blocks those pain receptors. And they used to be used mainly with the elderly, but I have a friend who can't take pain pills, and she uses that. TENS therapy is actually wired into her spine, and that's what she uses for her pain. So she often has to go see the doctor to get the batteries replaced in that. There's physical therapy, hydrotherapy, which is using water, and ice and heat. I know when I had knee surgery, I learned that ice was like the best pain reliever out there, and for some, doing hypnosis. Looking at the emotions, anger, resentment, jealousy, envy, and guilt can also contribute to depression. Anger is half of the fight or flight. It pushes people away and asserts dominance or control. Excessive anger can lead to depression. It exhausts the stress response system, contributes to negative cognitions, and impairs relationships. So just being angry can exhaust you, do you just spending that much time and energy So it's being able to focus out of that, maybe learning how to manage anger as well. Go to the next slide. Jealousy and envy can be thought of as anger at someone for having something you want, self-anger for not having it, like I should have won the lottery. Why did they win the lottery? This existential anger can be for the universe not being fair. Jealousy may contribute to feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. So some activity that you can do with someone is have them make a list of those people that they're jealous of. And what is it that they are jealous of them over? What way are they better off than you because they have those things? How does this envy or jealousy affect your ability to live a rich, meaningful life? And what is a more productive way to use this energy? And speaking from a cultural viewpoint, I was raised by my grandparents who are Arapaho, and that's one of the things I was taught was we're not supposed to be jealous of people when they have things. We're supposed to be happy for them, and let them know that, it's good you got a new car, or glad you got that good job. I'm just being taught different things. So depending on what your cultural values and beliefs are, can be helpful. Our emotions, guilt can be thought of as shame, embarrassment, or self-anger for something you did or should have done. Some people have difficulty letting go of guilt because they think they deserve to suffer. If they forgive themselves, they might do it again. Go to the next slide. An activity you can do to help someone who's struggling with guilt. Make a list of the things you feel guilty about, also known as the Fearless Moral Inventory. AA, this is one of the 12 steps of being able to make amends to people that you've hurt. How can you make amends? What can you learn from it? Forgiving yourself and letting it go. Talking about forgiveness. What does it mean? How does the concept of forgiveness make you feel? And what does the phrase forgiveness is for you mean? And then there's also the activity of forgiveness as a fire activity. So all those things you want to forgive, you can put them on a piece of paper, and you can go outside and maybe you have a fire pit or make a little fire pit, and they can burn all of that stuff that's making them feel guilty so that they can forgive themselves or forgive others. Looking at an emotions activity. So you can do this as a group or with an individual. When you're angry, what do you notice? What are your anger triggers? What do those triggers make you feel? Do they make you feel vulnerable? Is it an external threat? Is it an internal threat? Is this a current threat or something from your past? Does this threat keep you from living a rich, meaningful life? How can you address each trigger to feel safer and more empowered? So it's helping these people come up with a way to help themselves feel safer and more empowered. So they'll have that ready to go list with them when they leave. Looking at our emotions, anxiety is also the other half of fight or flight. Chronic anxiety, worry, and stress will exhaust the stress response system, causing neurochemical and hormonal imbalances that increases muscle tension and pain, causes the body to adapt to excessive stress chemicals by shutting down the receptors. Anxiety makes it harder to sleep. Sorry, I'm just now seeing all of these typos that shouldn't be in there. And hormonal imbalances. All of these can lead to depression. An activity to do for anxiety for each of the following fears. Identify 3 situations in which you experience rejection and isolation, failure, loss of control, and fear of the unknown. Explore why these situations trigger your anxiety and brainstorm ways to deal with them. We could do some fact checking, like, is this really true? maybe somebody treated them a certain way because something else was going on with them at the moment and they were totally unaware it had effect on someone else. So that could be fact checking. Using guided imagery. There are a lot of guided imagery books out there. Amazon is where I believe I got all of mine. And then the dialectics, again, just seeing it as a challenge. Certain things happen in life that we have no control of, but they're always going to be there. So, let's take on this challenge. Grief, again, is a kind of sadness and depression as a result of loss. The grief process involves anger, usually at the self, other, or existential, and depression, helplessness to change the situation, and hopelessness that you will move on. And like I said, the losses just aren't about death. They go through that cycle of the denial, the anger, the bargaining, and the acceptance as part of the grief stage. So just letting them know that it doesn't necessarily have to mean you lost someone who died. It could be, like I said, a lost relationship, a lost job, a lost friend, something along those lines that it still causes us some grief. An activity you can do would look at the loss identification. Identify those losses. Are they existential? Did you lose your dreams, your hope, faith, safety, your independence, innocence? Social, such as moves. You moved from somewhere, you lost people, lost pets, lost, relationships ended. Some physical abilities, some people lose a limb. I have a cousin who lost an arm, and I'd be amazed at the things he does with one arm. He does pretty well in life. Some people lose their health. Some people get diabetes and they get depressed because of that, or some people lose, their appearance changes as we age. Our physical appearance changes as well. Some people lose property. Just identifying those things. Explore each of those what about those losses makes you angry, fearful, hopeless, or depressed, and develop an action plan to deal with those unpleasant feelings and give yourself permission to grieve. It's perfectly okay. It's a normal reaction to the things that happen in our life. Go to the next page. Another activity is acceptance. True losses can't be reacquired. We can't get, some things just are never going to come back. This is the final step in the grief resolution process, is acceptance. What does acceptance mean to you? For each of your losses, describe what acceptance means. Some other activities are narrative therapy. Chapters are letters, so you can rewrite your story, write a book, write a story about it. You can make some wind chimes out of things that will help you remember happy things about those people that you lost, or you can buy them and have it symbolize, hearing those wind chimes to remind you of those happy things. And maybe some sunlight catchers. Some people get those stained window glass things that you can hang in the window. Just certain little things that you can use to help you think of pleasant thoughts when you have those moments of thinking about that loss that you've had in your life. What you can change those to have those be a trigger for positive thoughts. Emotions. We're talking about happiness. Happiness chemicals reduce stress and depression. I know, this is a real explanation, clinical explanation there. When you're feeling good, those happy chemicals are naturally released in your brain and they make you feel happy. It is possible to be depressed about one aspect of your life and happy about 5 others. That's why I say if you have one thing that kind of is negative, find at least 3 positive to counteract those. Generally, you will not be happy and depressed in the exact same moment. So we want to focus on increasing the happy times. Some people like to watch comedians, focus on what is going right in your life. That's why they say, have something gratitude every day. Congratulate yourself for progress and not be focused on perfection. Get some exercise. It could be as little as, a 10-minute walk outside. And looking at environmental happiness triggers. Go to the next slide. Cognitive is looking at those negative thinking styles that contribute to exhaustion. Highlight what is out of your control. Embrace the dialectics by identifying the parts that are in your control. Heighten a sense of helplessness and hopelessness. Cognitive distortions, again, this is those I call them thinking errors. So some people have that all or nothing thinking. Nobody ever finds the exceptions. So we need to look at the in between there, in between the lines. Some people have self-fulfilling prophecies. So we want to help them come up with some positive mental imagery, like imagining yourself to do something that is happy, that's going to make you feel happy. And personalization, finding 3 explanations. Like I said, if there's one negative thinking style, come up with 3 positive things to counter that. Relationships, poor self-esteem contributes to self-loathing, shame, feeling of unlovability. This negatively impacts your relationships. You'll feel alone because you may feel rejected by other people. Causes people to seek external validation. So everybody wants to be, have that relationship, feel that sense of belonging. Doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic relationship, but feeling like they belong. So often causes, looking for that external validation. And again, in substance use, I found out some people use substances because they find people to go socialize. They're like, well, I'm lonely. So I'm not lonely when I'm with these other people. So they have to change their environment and the people that they hang around. An activity could be a self-esteem inventory for all the characteristics you don't have. And, some question would be, answer the question, if your child best friend had this flaw, would I still love them? So you can find some self-esteem inventories. I've attached a free book that I got somewhere that is really handy dandy that, I've given to my staff to print pages out for clients that they could use to help them learn some coping skills. Another activity could be in a group where everybody gets a piece of paper and you make snowflakes. I have a snowflake my grandson made for me. I don't know how many years ago, but I keep it on my refrigerator. But have everybody make a snowflake, and just pointing out that not everybody is going to make the same snowflake. In reality, there is no same snowflake. All the snowflakes are different. But then to have them pass their snowflake around and everybody in that group writes something positive on that snowflake for them, so that they, when they leave, they have some positive from the group members that were there. Another activity would be to sell yourself. Pretend you have to sell yourself. So why would somebody be interested in, like hiring you for a job? What can you say are your good qualities and characteristics that you bring, you bring to a job? And we have a program here that actually helps people get jobs for the day. And I can tell some of them are, maybe shy to go there, but I think, this would be a great activity for them to be able to go talk about what they could do to help for the day. We'll go to the next slide. Unhealthy, unsupportive relationships. Again, comes back to that research that we read of how important it is to have that family support, the strong family support. So having bad relationships can take a toll on our self-esteem. This is when we talk about those toxic relationships in people, we need to eliminate or avoid or manage the amount of time that we spend around them. Fears of abandonment can maintain high levels of stress and helplessness. So some people may fear the relationship's going to end or they're going to lose somebody. fail to buffer people, we fail to buffer people against stress, exhaustion, and neurotransmitter imbalances leads to depression. So some interventions could be enhance adult attachment with people who cares. So this, again, that's that family supportive environment. It doesn't have to be your biological family. Us natives, we adopt people. I have had people adopt me, and I have kids in the community from back home where I'm from. I take them as my children too, but it needs to be consistent. Giving them attention, being responsive, having empathy, and solution generated. So explore what each of those looks like to provide that support to that person, and do these for yourself. Address prior abandonment issues with people. Some people struggle because they were left, their parents left them when they were very young. And so that, it's a whole nother issue, but it can create some problems with them later on in life. And being able to enhance mindfulness. Go to the next slide. Looking at those high stress environments, those prevent relaxation and rest, increases our hopelessness and helplessness, increases those stress hormones, and decreases relaxation hormones. So some people are in really high stress jobs. Some people that have been on the front lines during all of this COVID, I think they probably have had the most stress that anybody could have right now. So, some activities you could do would be to design a low stress area in your home. Bedrooms are a good place to set up your low stress area of your favorite blanket, your curtains, maybe what you wear for bed, that you get ready for bed. Things that you could do at work or at school, like fixing up your desk, how you like things to look a certain way, and hanging some positive signs on the wall. Turn the negative into positive. I could have, my dog doesn't shed, but you could have dog hair everywhere and be like, I'm glad I have this dog. This dog, is part of my family. We could have a noisy family, but just being glad you have that family there and your house is filled with happy people. Oh, I have to go to work, being like, hey, I have a job. I'm happy to go to work. So changing everything into positives. We experience emotions through neurochemical signals. Imbalances in the neurochemical system, problems in, affects our mood, concentration, energy, our libido, our sleep, eating. It just causes imbalances in our whole neurochemical system. These depressive symptoms are huge triggers for relapse. So we want to identify what causes these neurochemical imbalances for each individual. Addressing them is crucial to their recovery. What helps, what makes it worse, and what is different when the problem doesn't exist. So being able to help these people problem solve and not solving it for them, letting them come up with the answers. And just to summarize all of this, depression is a cluster of symptoms created when we have neurochemical imbalances in the brain. That's what it is. What causes it can be emotional, can be cognitive, could be physical. We could be in pain. Interpersonal could be the relationships we have, environment, or any combination of any of those. We need to look at strength-based approaches that helps people see what they're already doing to prevent it or deal with the symptoms. So being able to point out that, you're doing a really good job of making sure you get some exercising and knowing you're getting some sleep. So they're already doing some things. Biopsychosocial means examining all the causative factors, recognizing all the factors that are reciprocal in nature. And that wraps this up. Do we have any questions, comments? Thank you. I see somebody's comment in the chat box. Thank you.
Yeah, we have we have gone over 20 minutes, and I just want to say, Avis, that obviously your presentations are very meaningful to people because I cannot believe this many people are still on after the 1 p.m. hour. So Central Time.
Thank you.
So thank you for putting all of this together. And if anybody does have a quick question, go ahead and ask Avis. I will let you know we do have, if you didn't see in the chat, we have another session like this, similar, but it's focusing on youth depression with cultural considerations. So Avis will be doing that next month, and we'll be doing that from Montana. So please join us, and it's at 12 o'clock Central Time on May 11th, if you'd like to learn about youth depression as well. And thank you again to Mitch Russell for including his staff on this, and we look forward to seeing you next month. If any questions, please feel free. Nelda, go ahead and unmute yourself. She had her hand up, Ava, so I maybe she's looking to unmute herself.
Yeah.
Sorry, my internet keeps going in and out. I'm sorry, I didn't need to press that.
Oh, okay. No worries, no worries. Okay, so we are just the question about can taking these monthly classes lead to a certificate in CASAC? Well, that would be a question for your organization. I know that through the university here at Iowa, we are NADAC certified. So if you're interested in that, you need to email, well, once you get your follow-up email, it will have information regarding CEUs in that email. So be looking for that. We usually have the students send those out, and they usually get to that about a day or two post presentation because of the upload that takes so long for the video. So look for your emails, and in the meantime, I don't think there's any more questions, Avis. So thank you again, and I look forward to next month's. Be on the lookout, you guys, for the follow-up email that'll have all of this information in it. And we're really glad you guys could stay on with us today. And thank you. Thank you again, Avis, very much.
Welcome.
Bye, everybody.